All right. So, good morning. Today, our CEU is on a very, very important topic. The reason that I brought this topic up is because in the last couple of days, couple of weeks, I've had reports from um, multiple mothers that are coming to our clinical settings, and they are reporting abuse, domestic violence. And because ABA also covers trauma-based, ABA resources. So that's why I thought we should talk about it. So Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Hello. My name is Dr. Jawahar Alvi. I'm a board certified behavior analyst. I am the clinical director at BASIS, Behavior and Special Educational Services. I have almost 24 years of experience under my belt. I think most of you know me. I'm on the advisory board for IBAO. So we actually started the programs, for IBAO in Pakistan. We are also trying to get everything, like credited, starting making a board in Pakistan. We've been trying to do that. We have 9 clinical settings all over Pakistan. And, we're trying to spread best evidence-based practices all over Pakistan. So here I am, and I wanted to talk about this. The reason that I want to talk about this, because this is very, very dear to my heart. So here I am. I gave you all my qualifications. I have a doctorate in advanced psychology. I am originally from Pakistan. And but why I came here today is after being a CEO, after, knowing that I have won so many awards, like I won almost 6 awards last year for business excellence, for being the top business, for being a visionary, for being a, entrepreneur, for being a leadership award, for being innovation in mental health. I myself am a victim of domestic abuse. And it takes a lot to come out and talk about it, but it was very important for me to come and talk to you guys about this. Looking at me, nobody can ever say that such like a woman who is so, like, almost 50 years old, who has accomplished so much in her life. I have 2 masters, would have gone through domestic abuse. But it is very important for me in the beginning to go over the cycle of abuse. So what I'm going to start with over here is, I just want to so what I'm going to start over here is by introducing you to the cycle of abuse. I've been married twice. It's very, very hard to come out and talk about your experiences, but I'm going to. So the first experience that I had was I was married off at a very young age. And I was married at 19. I came from a troubled family. I shouldn't say troubled family, but broken. My father had married off. I was my single mom. And at that time, when you're 19 and you're young, you just want to get out, right? You're like, okay, things are not working my way. I just want to get out. So my mom said, you have to do your master's. So after my nikah, we did the master's. I finished my master's and I got married. Never thought that I'm going to be a victim of abuse. Now, there was no violence in that marriage, but there was financial abuse, there was emotional abuse, and I basically spent 22 years of my life with a person who was a narcissistic person. And he actually does have a narcissistic personality disorder because his anger used to go from here to here. And I kept on dealing with it because I thought that, hey, you know what? With time, he's going to get better. And then, there came a time when, he had kids, he didn't give time to his kids. He used all my finances up, things like that. It never got better. It went worse and worse and worse. After 22 years of marriage, we went through one separation, you know, and he went through he had never had like a proper job. He would always have jobs that he kept for a little bit and then leave them. And all the stability in the marriage came through my jobs and my work. And I was working 4 jobs, taking care of the kids, taking care of the house, taking care of my in-laws. But I wasn't allowed to say anything because if I said anything, it was a fight, you know, then there were extramarital affairs and things like that. After 22 years of marriage, he put me like um, he put me like a decoration piece. And at that time, I'm like, you know what? If he's treating me like this now, what's going to happen when I become older, right? So at that time, I decided that I am going to, you know, I'm just going to take, I'm going to, I would like to separate from him. And I did that. But it wasn't easy because what an abuser does is, he scares you. And then what he does is that he manipulates the family and the family court system. And so he did that. But that's okay. I took my step and I had to walk out because that was not going to end well with my mental state. And so I had to move out. What happened is that the next one was scarier than the first one, right? So what happened is I was in Pakistan. I met somebody who I knew from a very, very long time. And they come as charmers, right? So they are charming. They are like, oh, we have this beautiful job. We are going to be we're on top of the world. And he came, he charmed me. He said, oh, all your problems are going to be over with me. And so without telling anybody, I took a step and I said, oh, maybe this is the end to my problems. Because guess what? People coming from, single families or, like me, I was just looking for that escape, like maybe, okay, this is my happy ending. So I jumped into that marriage. And the second thing he's told me is that when he was young, he also went through trauma. So because of that trauma, he wants to, get married and have a good life. And he was already married. That was the biggest mistake that I had made. So today I'm here to tell you all the mistakes that I have made so that they are not repeated. And he was like, "Oh, I'm not happy." And so what he did is that I was fine. I was doing good. I was, running all these clinical settings. My kids, they were growing up. And I just jumped into that marriage. So, you know what the first thing was? The first thing that he did is that, he charmed me. After he charmed me, the next thing was that he isolated me. So that's what all abusers do. They charm you and then they try to attract you. They try to keep you isolated after that. Now, how many of you, I'm not sure, have had that experience, but they try to isolate you from everybody, from that's what my first one did too. That's what my second one do. Oh, they're not good. Your family's not good. Your friends are not good. Everybody is bad. So we're just going to isolate you guys. So he isolated me. And then, after isolating me, he left his job. That was the third one. He's like, "Oh, you make me feel so secure and I love you so much. So I am going to give all my time to you. I don't want to work anymore." But me, as being such a successful woman outside, I never read the signs of abuse. Like, okay, so, and I kept on thinking, okay, well, it's okay. He can stay home. He's getting older. Maybe, we can run the family together. But he left his job. And he's like, I want to give you that time and I want to be with you. And I said, okay. And then, he kept on saying those things. And then the next step that happened is that after he seduced me and after he, isolated me, he started creating fear in me. Now, how do you create fear? He started creating fear by bringing a gun into the house. So he brought a gun into the house and he started telling me about all the resources that he has in Pakistan with all these police officers. So I'm like, okay. So he brought the gun and he put it inside a safe. And then when I asked him, I said, why do you need a gun? He's like, oh, I just want to be safe. I just want everybody else to be safe. But you have to understand, this is a cycle. And after that, he wanted to, he started drinking. And, I used to ask him, I said, why are you drinking? Because before you used to say that you were drinking because of, your traumatic childhood and things like that. But why are you drinking now? And he's like, oh, I just need it. I'm anxious, blah, 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 blah. So he started drinking more and more and more. And so that abuse cycle continued. And then what happened is that a day came that he hit the door on my face. And my ear went and it hit the wall, and I have a boxer's ear over here. And I'm like, no, 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 he didn't hit me. He didn't hit me. It was just, it was an accident. But he was angry. And I denied the fact that he hit me. Next day was fine. Everything was fine. I never told anybody anything. Slowly, it started to, after 2 months, we are talking, he's getting more aggressive and he slapped me. He slapped me. My head went and hit the wall and my head slashed from here and the blood started coming out. My head was swollen and, his son came and he put ice on it. But for a month and a half, I had a bruise all across my face and I had to put makeup on it so that nobody could see it. And I still kept on saying, hey, you know what? He's a good person. I'm going to help him. I'm going to help, it's okay. He was emotional, blah, blah, blah. But right after he hit me on my head, 2 days later, he hit me so bad because he was angry with his kids and I was trying to save them that he hit me on my stomach. And I started bleeding. And even then I was like, no, it's fine. He'll be fine. Everything will be fine. But no, it didn't get better. After 2 months, 3 months, and he apologized and apologized. After 2 months again, the same thing happened. And it repeated and repeated. And there were multiple fights. And he's, accusing me of things I've never done. The same cycle is continuing. And I am not understanding that I am a typical victim of domestic violence. So if I can be a victim of domestic violence, anybody can be a victim of domestic violence. I didn't tell anybody. I didn't tell my brother. He's the only brother I have. I had nobody else. I didn't tell him. I didn't tell my daughter. I didn't tell my staff members. I didn't tell nobody. But my neighbors knew. The last night that I spent in his house, he kicked me out of the house. I fell down on the floor. I hurt my tailbone. My arms were filled with marks. And that day I walked out. He brought a big stick to hit me. I called the police. You know what the police did? They came and they laughed with him. They didn't take my report and they left with him. They took him because he was drunk, they took him to the station. They brought him back and I ran away from there. And I said, now there is no looking back. And I went back and I never looked back and I divorced him. Now here's the question. Why did I stay? because many of you guys don't know that what is the end game of a cycle of abuse. The end game of a cycle of abuse is that I will be killed. He held a gun to my forehead twice. And thanks to all the Hollywood movies that I had watched, I, punched him, and then with my foot, I, I just kicked the gun and I was saved. But what if that did not happen? What if I didn't know how to do it? So basically, why I stayed is because I thought that that he's a deeply troubled man, and I'm the only one. I'm in love with him, and I'm the only one who's going to straighten up his demons, help him out. But that never happens. You have to get out at the time that you get. So get out as soon as you guys can. Now, one of the things that happens after you try to break the cycle of abuse is they're going to stalk you. They are going to manipulate the family court system, and they are not going to leave you alone. They're financially going to starve you if they are financially, they have those resources. But if they don't, they are going to manipulate you. They're going to threaten you. They are going to use all your relatives to go against you. They're going to all these things just to make sure that you come back to them. But if you go back to them, you're dead, because he's going to make sure that if you're not his, you're nobody's. So you have to be very careful about these things. 15 million children in the USA, according to the CDC, are being abused every year. 1 in 3 women are abused every year in the United States. Another thing that I wanted to tell you is that women between 16 to 24, they are 3 times more likely to fall in the cycle of domestic abuse as compared to women of other ages. Over 500 women in the USA are killed in a year in the USA. Another thing that an abuser does is that he creates an illusion that you are dominant. But that's not true, because they are the ones who are more dominant than you are. So do not fall into this trap. Never, ever fall into this trap. Now, after telling you my story, we are going to go and talk about what are the resources that are available in ABA and how we can help our clients. Now, when these clients, they come to us, we are working with them as a family, right? So basically, when we work with them as a family. Now, how many of you over here are counseling parents all the time? Most of you, right? Because I have been in this field, not even in America, but also in Pakistan. I have seen parents. I see parents, like even recently I was doing an intake, and the mother and the father, they are there, and they come separately. And the mother's telling me a different story about abuse at home, and the father's telling me a different story. So this abuse, which is any kind of harm that is happening at home, which could be a loud yelling, which could be breaking your utensils, which could be fighting, which could be hitting the child, which could be hitting the mom, which could be hitting your pets, because this was one of the other things that my ex did, was hit my cat, or kick them out of the room, because they knew that that is something that I'm really attached to. So anything like that, if the child is going to see at home, they are going to make sure that either they are going to imitate that behavior at the clinical setting, or they are going to be withdrawn. Over here, I'm going to give you an example. I was working with a foster family, and we had a child who was in a middle school. He was around 14 and 13 or 14, and this kid was so good. I was his behavior analyst. He was doing good, no behaviors at all. He used to go to school, but he was a foster kid. So he was a kid that was taken by the state, and he was a foster kid to somebody. So one day what happened is that the person who worked directly with him, they called me and they said, Jay, you have to come because he hit me so hard that I don't know how to deal with him. And I'm like, what? I'm like, he never hits. So I went to the school. I started doing observations every single day. No issue, nothing. Everything was going fine. And then all of a sudden, we couldn't figure out what's going on. We did all the ABCs, we did everything. We're like, I don't understand what's going on. And then I get a call on the next week from the same person, and she's like, Jay, I think we figured out what happened. Can you come to the school? I said, yeah, sure, I'll be there. So I go to the school, and coming to know, his actual mom came to see him at school. Now, his actual mom was wearing the same perfume that his teacher was wearing. And because this child had been through so much abuse in his life with his actual mom, that when this teacher wore the same perfume, it triggered those emotions in the past that he couldn't take out on his mom, because at that time he saw all that violence. So these are those you know things that trigger those behaviors in the kids. So when we are working with kids, we want to make sure, or with families, we do not want to re-traumatize those kids, right? Now, imagine if there are kids, like even in Islamabad, we have a family, that is having issues. We have families in Lahore, we have families in everywhere. So they come to us. But imagine that if there is a mother who's being beat up every day and the child is seeing that, how are we going to work with that family? So let's talk about the ethical code of ABA. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is participating within our scope. So we have to make sure that we are participating in our scope of practice. So we have to practice in our own scope, which means that we have to see that if we are working with families, we have to be in our own scope. So if we work with early childhood, we have to work with early childhood. And then if the family is asking for resources, we are going to refer them to resources, because if we don't know how to counsel them, we're not going to counsel them. And the next is minimizing the risk of behavior change intervention. So we want to make sure that whatever behavior change intervention we are doing with the child, we want to minimize the risk of that, because we don't want that we do one thing with the child and then hello. Okay, guys, hold on. Let me. Okay, I just muted everybody. So we want to minimize the risk of behavior change intervention. So if there's any risk of changing intervention, which is going to have an adverse reaction on a child, we want to minimize that risk. What is trauma? Now let's define trauma in terms of the behavior analytic terms. So trauma basically is exposure to an event that has adversive effects on functioning and well-being. Now, for example, if you guys are like, like I get into an accident, for example, like, a couple of months ago, I had an accident. I was coming out of my house. I finished work. It was 4 o'clock. I was hungry. I came out of my house in the car. I was going to go get something to eat. I'm going at 20 miles an hour. I was in the street, kids were playing. One of the kids came on the electric bike, and he came in so much speed that I braked, but even when I braked, he hit my car. And it was so hard that I jerked my neck. Now I came out of the car and I started crying. Now, why am I crying? I'm crying because it was a shock, and I'm crying because the kid fell down and he hurt his leg. My car was, my car was also damaged, but I'm still thinking, oh my God, I hope this kid is okay. And this kid was, was a adopted kid. He was special also. And I was like, oh my God, and I'm crying and I'm crying. And but it was a shock to me. It was a trauma to me. And imagine after all these months, I'm still talking about it because I didn't get a chance to like talk about it, right? And every time I walk through that neighborhood or I take my car, I look at his house again and again to make sure, is he okay? So, any exposure to a traumatic event that affects my functioning is called as a trauma. If there's a death in the family, right? If you see, even if you see some, like even the wildfires that happened in California, after I look at those, for half an hour I cannot do anything, because it's not only the people that got hurt over there, it's the animals also. Okay, that was a very small example. Look at what's happening in Palestine and Gaza. If you look at those, you cannot eat all day. That is a traumatic event. Imagine what's going with those kids. Imagine the refugees that are coming out of there. Imagine Syrian refugees. Imagine those kids that have seen war, that have seen death, that have seen like all kinds of hurt, right? Imagine the kids in where, you see all these news where the father killed the mother. What is going on with these kids? So the other day, I was looking at a TV documentary. The father had shot the mother and the other son. And now this child was going to be taken into custody of the police and put, with the DCFS. Over here, we have resources. What about Pakistan? What about India? What about Bangladesh? What about Egypt? What about all these different countries? Do they have resources? Do they have those places where they are going to put these kids? Do they have, resources where, these kids will go, and will they talk? No, they're not going to talk. Now, when the counselor was working with this little girl whose father shot the mother and the son, he had to take like 5, 6, 7 days to get something out of this child. So any event that is going to, affect your functioning, and your well-being is a traumatic event. So can you guys give me an example of a traumatic event?
Hi, yep, I have an example. So it was like although it's like 6, 7 years old event, but it was back in Australia when I hit my car with another car,
Yeah,
and I couldn't walk on the road for almost a week. So
right,
I had that feeling that all the cars are gonna come and hit me. So
right,
I had that, trauma, and I couldn't even walk on the street. I couldn't go to drop off my kids at school, although the school was like on a walking distance. So yeah, I can understand trauma that it actually, it hindered my functioning, and it actually stopped me from doing the daily chores. Actually, I couldn't stop think, and still now I'm talking about it, and I can. My voice is kind of trembling because I can't even. I just don't want to think about it. But whenever the image comes in my mind, I just freeze for a second at what happened that day and how I, recovered from it.
right.
So yeah, yeah.
Also, we had the earthquake. So somebody just wrote in the chat about the earthquake of 8th of October. Yes, that was a big, big event. My goodness. And also, the shooting that happened at the Army Public School, that was a big traumatic event. I mean, I cannot like that day they had a TV show. Um, I'm a very sensitive person, and they were talking like, they were remembering the kids, and I was just sitting and crying. Like, I just, it's very sad for the mothers, just to remember those days. So these events are very, very traumatic. So anything like Galia, you gave such a good example because, if you are, I mean, for days, like if you go through an earthquake, you'll feel like, everything is like moving. And even with the car, you know, when I had that accident, I didn't want to drive the next day because I was like, I can't. I feel like I'm shaking too. So any event, and also concussions. So I had two concussions because when I was working with with adults at Proviso, I was a high school teacher. You know, I got hurt twice, and then I couldn't drive for 6 months because I used to feel like everything's moving because I got hit in the head. And also, you know, the kids were like, you know, like my memory and like my brain was so, um, you know, it was really bad. So I couldn't do that. And domestic abuse itself is so bad. I mean, I've witnessed it. I cannot tell you how bad it is for the kids, for the families. And, you know, when I came back home, I didn't come back home. I actually took an apartment in Islamabad and I was living over there. Um, and my mom got really sick at that time. That's when my brother found out. He said, "Why are you here?" And I said, I just, you know, I just separated. And he couldn't believe it. But then I had to tell him that, you know, and then he saw my arms because they were filled with like marks. And that's when he realized, and he started crying. He said, "Why didn't you tell me?" And that was the same time when I think the Noor incident had happened, where, you know, when her husband had killed her, and you know, he was playing with her head or something when they captured him, because the defense was that he had schizophrenia. So, you know, it's very scary, guys. So if any of you are in, I understand there are kids involved, but I think your life is more important than anything else. Yeah, Noor Mukaddam, that case happened. All right. So trauma happens when there is abuse and neglect in the family. There is domestic violence. There is substance abuse and divorce. Okay, let's talk about substance abuse for a little bit. So, you know, in my situation, there was also substance abuse because there was a lot of alcohol consumption. And you know that alcohol consumption also alters your state of mind. So that is something that we have to make sure that, you know, anybody who's a victim of substance abuse, like alcohol has become so common in Pakistan. Amphetamines have become so common in Pakistan. Ice has become so common. So people who are using all these things, they are going through a lot. And, you know, we want to stay away from them. Now, trauma. So basically what we have to see is that according to CDC, 61% adults, they are traumatized. Not only women, but all adults, they go through some kind of trauma once a year or once in their lifetime. Basically, when we are talking about trauma informed resources, there are a lot of resources that are available on the ABAI website. You can go and you can enroll to the ABAI. IBAO does not have any resources at this point. And I do want to, you know, we are working on that so that anybody who is an IBT or IBA, they can have, you know, access to those resources. But we have to look at trauma specific resources which are available. You can find researches, you can find studies that are done on that, and how you can help those victims. So trauma informed is to know past and current abuse. You have to look at that in the life of the victim. You have to see that what happened, and you also have to know the client that you're working with. You have to know the families, the mom, and then you have to design an intervention that is going to match their systems. So basically, like we had a family currently, the father was abusing the mom for a very, very long time. Come to find out that, you know, it was a marital rape was involved in there too. And this is the case with everybody, like everybody's gone through it. Um, you know, so what happened is that the mom, when she separated, the father started to accuse her of an extramarital affair, you know, things like that. So what I did is I tried to talk to my team, you know, the directors, and ask them to design an intervention that is going to work around the mom and around the child, because you cannot make them adhere to your rules at that time, because several things could happen. You know, the child could be mourning, the mom could be mourning, you know, they could be late, they could come in earlier, you know, they might not be eating well, whatever. So we have to make sure that we are making the families comfortable. And if you are unable to counsel them, you make sure that you refer them to counselors. So that's what exactly we do. So we have to design our intervention that is going to match their systems, not the other way around. And we have to work in accordance to our vulnerable clients, and we have to make sure that we facilitate those consumers, and we want to make sure that whatever we do is in alliance with our ethics code. Because what's going to happen is, and I have been through this also, what happened is that I become very much invested in my clients, and then there's something that is called as burnout and compassionate fatigue that I go through. Because some, like earlier on in my career, what used to happen was that if I'm going through a kid, who's been abused, or parents that have been abused, I used to come home and keep on thinking about it and thinking about it, and then I couldn't sleep, I couldn't eat, and if there's a phone that the mother had, and the bell resembles a bell on my phone, oh, it takes me back to the moment when the mom was talking about it. So I used to get really frustrated over these things, and sad. But you have to draw that boundary. You can't do that. You are a professional. If you're working with such kind of cases, you have to work professionally with them. You have to draw that boundary. Make sure your interventions are collaborating. You're collaborating your interventions. Don't be so strict. You want to make sure that if one day the child needs it easy, you give it easy. If there's one day that you have to be a little bit firmer, you are a little bit firmer. The goal is that you want to make sure that you are not re-traumatizing the family or the child. You also have to see that what the client's experiences have been. What has he gone through? Has he gone through like violence, abuse? Has he seen gun violence? Has he seen substance abuse? Has he seen, there are parents who, I have seen the worst over here in America because I have worked with a lot of families. So I've seen kids who have also, been victim of prostitution. There are kids who have also been human trafficking. There are kids who have also seen their mothers being prostitutes, so you really have to know the family. You have to, oh, I'll tell you a story. There was a kid that I was working with. He was on life support. So I mean, over here, as a, the school district says, okay, if your child is on life support, he can stay at home. We're going to send a teacher from the school and they can go and work with the child. So because I was also a teacher for 7 years, the school district sent me. So I go to their home. I used to go to their home once a week. Everything was fine. There used to be a nurse over there. The mom used to be there, but it was a very scary neighborhood. One day, I went there and the dad is sitting with his four friends. They're drinking and they have guns in front of them. And the nurse wasn't there. I walked out of there and I called my supervisor and I told her, hey, this ain't happening. The thing is this, now if I'm scared, there are other kids in the house too, right? So you have to be very careful when you're working with, families like that, kids like that, that you make sure that your intervention matches their family styles. We had another family in Lahore. The father was abusing the mom. He would, close her in the room, hit her, beat her, whatever. It was really bad. So when we found out about it, my team and I, we tried to figure out a plan that would help her um, to get out of, so that the therapies would not be interrupted for the child and to counsel the mom. So whenever she would come in, we would sit with her, we would counsel her, and then we would work, with the child. Also, there were other issues going on and we would counsel her for that and refer her for counseling services. The other thing is that when you're working with kids who are coming from traumatic families, or when you're working, you want to make sure that maybe they're crying or they're throwing things because they are coming from traumatic backgrounds. So they're taking their anger out, or maybe they are, imitating or modeling that undesired behavior. So maybe at that time, you don't want to put them on extinction, because extinction is not going to work because they have so much built inside them. So at that time, maybe you want to work on alternative behaviors. Don't put them on extinction, because putting them on extinction is going to get more anger in them. So make sure that you are doing skill buildings with them. So try to make sure that you're, hey, let's do this. Like yesterday I went and I worked with a kid, and he was throwing things, and the therapist was so good. She's like, hey, come on, let's play ball, or let's do the Lego. So instead of giving attention to that throwing behavior or putting it on extinction, she did skill building. So that's what you do. You do skill building behavior. Also, avoid physical contact or physical touch with those kids who have been physically abused, because the moment you go close to them, they're going to retaliate and you're going to get hit. So you don't want that, or you have to avoid contact with a client who has been physically abused. Some kids, they don't want to go to the bathroom with you because they have been abused. Some kids, they don't want you to touch them. Don't touch them. Don't hug them, because the moment you hug them, they are going to hit you. And it's the same for animals. It's the same for humans. Don't do that. Don't touch them. Um, you know, Make sure that you're not using reprimands as a punisher for them, because they've already been reprimanded. Somebody has already used a loud voice for them. So because the trauma was already a punisher for them, so don't use a lot of punishment procedures for them. But what happens is that people who are not trained behavior analytically, they always use punishers for them. Because this happened with me recently. I work with a client, and he's older, because I have a lot of older clients too. And, you know, somebody beat him up with a broom because, he doesn't have parents, he doesn't have family. And since, he was young, he's been in the system. And now, whenever you take the broom out, he has such a bad behavior. He starts hitting everybody. So, we don't take the broom out. We want to shape up his behavior. We want to desensitize him. I went to his day program, and his staff, who's not behavior analytically, trained, and they don't listen to a shit I say. They said, oh, wait, I'm going to take the broom out. And I said, you don't do that. You don't scare him. He's been through trauma. Then I have another client who's an adult also. Somebody, he doesn't like taking baths because somebody hit him while he was taking a bath. And this kid is nonverbal and he's blind. He's legally blind. So he will kill you, or he will hit you if you take him for a bath. He'll take a shower, but he'll never take a bath. So these are indicative of the fact that he was abused. He's gone through trauma. So you have to be very careful with these clients, with these moms also, because they've gone through a lot. You have to be very, very careful. The behavior analyst should only focus on the current contingencies. So you shouldn't worry about what happened. And like, you shouldn't never talk to them. Oh, this happened with you in the past. Now we are going to do this with you. No, always focus on your current contingencies, that what you want, what you're going to do with the child currently, not what you're going to do with them from the past. You're bringing things in it. So basically, the proper framework for trauma informed care is, you have to acknowledge the trauma, and you have to see that what is its impact on the child. You have to ensure safety and trust of the client. Okay, you have to promote choice, and you have to have shared governance, and then you have to emphasize on skill building. And that's about it. So you should write these points down. You should acknowledge the trauma and its impact on the current environment. You should endure safety and trust. You should promote choice and share governance. And you should also emphasize on skill building procedures. So now here's what it is. When I started talking to you, I started talking to you about my experiences, but you also have to understand that in my experiences, it was a whole environment. In that environment, there were kids, there were pets, there was me, there was him. And, if this was a special needs family, this would have had a lot of effect The divorce has an effect on the child. Now the father's not there, even though he's abusive, but he's still the father. So all these are big dynamics, right? Um, so we have to look into all of these things and we have to deal with all of these things. And as a behavior analyst, as a therapist, how are we going to deal with these situations? Um, Now I'm done, but I'm going to open, up to questions that you guys have to ask me. So Hira's question is, oh wow. There's a lot we have to do, like we have to do for autism. I'm going to tell you what can an ordinary woman do to overcome domestic violence. Common statements in Pakistan include once my children are, oh, yes, they are scared. So what you should do is basically look, when I was married the second time, I was an ordinary woman. I was an ordinary woman on the street. I had nobody to help me. I told you what the police did to me. So I think that there's an agency that is being formed for domestic abuse. You can call them. Hopefully, I can get their number and I can share it in the group. Secondly, it's very hard. It's not easy. It's not easy, but you have to build yourself up. Like you have to think about what are the things that you can do. Do you have a skill? Can you go out? Can you do something on your own? And just get out. Involve the police, involve the lawyers. There are some good lawyers also that can help you get out of of this relationship. I mean, call the police, but just get out. Don't stay in those relationships. I know that that's exactly why I stayed in my first marriage for 22 years, because that was the mindset of my dada and my mom, that now you're married, you don't look back at your house anymore. So I understand that, but you can't. You have to get out, and you have to counsel mothers to do that too. It's very hard. It's very hard, believe me. When I took the decision the second time, I was thinking, yaar, log kya kahenge? What are people going to say to me? I have a daughter, I have to marry her. And how am I going to deal with this? Like, what are people going to say? Is there something wrong with me? Am I wrong? Am I crazy? uh, I mean, and you know what, it doesn't end here. It goes on, because now there are people who abuse me in the workspace also. Like, for example, I have I have had I'm so sad at so many things that happened at my work. Like, I created bases, and I'm a person who loves everybody, right? And now people are like, people take advantage of my situation. Like, they know I'm a single, you know women, and they take my resources, they open their own clinical work, which is fine. I don't have any issue with it, but the issue that I have is when people do it behind my back, right? And people take advantage of me. So if I try to help anybody, then they take advantage of me. So that's a trauma for me too. The first time it happened a couple of years ago, you know I did not get out of my room for 2 days because I was so depressed. Okay. Um, Many people are willing to spend too much on marriage events, but not, no, they are not. Like, people are just spending money. I don't even understand, why does a wedding cost so much money? Like, I was thinking, oh, okay, ab meri beti hai, my daughter's here, I have to save for her wedding. And I'm like, how the weddings have become so expensive in Pakistan. I'm like, how the hell am I going to afford this wedding? Um, how to stop emotional abuse? Oh man, that will never end. I'm telling you, when I had my first husband, and I was like, I used to, his mom didn't like him, his aunt didn't, his sisters didn't like him, his brother didn't like him. And when I used to talk to them, they were like, yeah, he's like this, he's like this. But when we had the big fight, and I told them that, this is not, look, they took his side. They didn't listen to me. And after I took the divorce, they didn't, they were all on his side. Nobody listened to me. Nobody listens to, I mean, they don't listen to me. It was such a hard decision. I can't tell you. I haven't seen my son in 4 years now. This is the fifth year. And I'm sad. I'm sad. I cried for the first 3 years because he manipulated my son. He manipulated the court system. But I have faith in my Allah. I know one day I will see him, inshallah. If I'm right, I'm going to see him. How can we help the kids with special needs who are being abused by the home? Well, I think you guys need to start doing trainings. So I don't know where you guys are. If you're start doing trainings, call them, tell them that you have to come for this mandatory training. I know, Multan, yeah, you have to call them, do trainings in Urdu, Punjabi, whatever. Train them, tell them that this is wrong. But we don't have a proper system over there, no police system. And then, I don't even know if the Child Protective Bureau is better than the parents or not, because they are bigger abusers, right? I mean, that's what I've seen. Because like for me, I was scared. um oh, Alina's here. Hi, Alina, how are you? uh ah so good to see you. Okay, so it's so hard because kids are like I had a kid who I thought was being sexually abused. That's another thing. You guys, we have to be very careful with sexual abuse, and mostly the sexual abusers are our family people, people that are drivers, our family members. And once we talked to the mom took her out of the school, of our bases. And then I don't know where to report them, because even if we, you know, I, I don't know where to take them, because even if you go to the Child Protective Bureau, I've heard stories about Child Protective Bureau. They don't do anything, or, they are bigger abusers. I don't know. I mean, but you have to, you look, you can take a horse to water. You cannot force them to drink from it. So you have to separate your professional and personal life from you have to do that. So you can do the best you can. You have to train parents every single day. Just take a group of parents, tell them, chalo aaj padhai karni hai, let's go, let's study about it. But it's very hard to change mentalities. It took me a long time to reach to where I am. I started in 2014, and now I see some change in some areas, but there's still a very, very long way to go. Okay, let me see more. I have a lot of questions here. Okay. So yeah, hitting is not, so I think basically when you bring parents over and you talk to them about hitting is a punishment behavior, it's not going to help. I just think that you have to start training them more and more. Okay, good books. Yes, I can send you articles and I can send you books. No, I'll just send you articles in this group. Uh, okay. Emotional abuse is that, I think counseling is very important for those people. Try to change them, get counseling. How can mothers shift the narrative that raises boys, kings and girls as slaves? Oh yeah, I am the perfect example, because my daughter, my ex-husband, my first husband, he didn't pay a single dime for my daughter to go to college. I paid everything for her. Like I have, and she is doing beautifully. Mashallah, she is doing beautifully. She's become a very nice, young, elegant girl. She's finished her college, and he treated her like a slave. Um, I just a lot of training. Hey, you know what? One person cannot change the world. It has to be a community, and we have to train everybody and tell them. And I think girls are better than boys, basically, because we take care of our parents, we work harder. I think that we should change the narrative by a lot of trainings. And then, oh no, I'm good. Alhamdulillah, I'm out of it. This year has been a great year. Last year, I did 2 umrahs. I got so many awards, so I'm so happy this year. And okay, what, hold on, guys. If I'm, okay, how to detect and deal a narcissistic abuse. Okay, So there are a lot of videos on narcissistic personality disorder, Akash. I can send them to you in this group. And I really like this girl, this doctor who does a lot of talk on it. So I'm going to send, because I had to listen to it to understand it. So I'm going to send you that. Okay, next question is, what do you do when you've lived in Pakistan for 3 years, have CPTSD, and you're afraid to go out because you're almost hit because of bikers coming from the wrong side of the road? Oh, so this is basically a phobia kind of a situation, right? Um, there are a lot of pro bono, people who would like to do therapy too. And I think that there is also, like at bases, we have a lot of people who can do therapy also, Aisha. So I think let's talk about this, and see what we can do. There are many families in which the mothers are physically and mentally abused, but they can't get out because of their children. Oh, yeah, I know. But I know a mother who was from Swat. Oh, I love her. She used to come to Basis Islamabad, same situation. I could have never believed that she's going to get out, but I'm telling you, if she can get out, anybody can. She came from a very, very backward area. She had a kid with autism, but she went out. So basically, I think, first of all, it comes from you. It comes from inside here. So if you have decided you can get out, you can start working, you can start doing things. And even at bases, if moms come to me, they talk to me, we're always like, we have a lot of kids that are discounted. We have a lot of kids that we don't even take, money from them. So I don't think Allah makes resources. Always believe in Allah. The day I walked out of both my houses, I looked up and I said, Ya Allah, you are going to be my guide. And Alhamdulillah, He has guided me. The first thing is have faith and then, try your best. So you have to convince them. Samida Ali. Samida, are you working for bases? I want to know if your boss is abusing me. Okay, okay. I was like, are we abusing you? All right. So, change jobs. You don't want to be in that environment. I cannot, like, not even when I was a BCBA, even before that, when I was like a teacher, assistant teacher, I changed jobs. You don't want to be in a toxic environment because you can't change them. Oh, thank you guys. Who's Sarvat? Okay, Sarvat wrote me a message. Akash, thanks. And then True. Okay, now, how can women in Pakistan empower themselves, particularly financially, to support themselves and their children, given the challenges they face? And it says, yes. So there's a lot of issues with, yes, I agree with that. It's hard, but we have to try, right? We have to help each other. We have to access opportunities. It's very hard. Trust me. That's why I kept on going, kept on educating myself. But I think that Allah will create some ways. Oh, I'm good, guys. Alhamdulillah, I'm good. So, okay, guys. I ask you guys for a favor? Can you, if you don't mind, if you guys can I take a picture so that we can post on Facebook that we had a really good session? Anybody who wants to come, anybody who doesn't want to come, that's fine. And that's about it. Hold on. My phone got disabled. Well, thank you everybody for joining me. And I'm going to send you resources. Okay. And let me see how to take a screenshot here. Okay, mashallah, we have a lot of people here. Agency's name. Okay, so there is an agency in Islamabad. Oh my God, my phone got disabled. Okay, there's an agency in Islamabad. The name of it is, I think, domestic violence something. So I can give you that. Okay, let me see how do you take a picture from the, from the, from the computer? Hold on. Darul Sakoon. Yes, one is Darul Sakoon. All right, cheese, guys. And then one more picture, because you guys are a big group. I'm so excited to see such a big group. So if you have any more questions, you can always ask in this group. And it was fun. And inshallah, we will have.
Good evening, ma'am.
Yes.
Uh, can you hear me clearly? I think I have a problem with my mic, but
No, I can hear you.
is my voice clear?
Yes.
Okay. In regards to some of the comments, I was reading on the side, so I would like to add some things to it.
Who is this?
Regarding like Faryal.
Okay. Yes, Faryal, please go ahead.
Yep. So basically, some women they are asking like, how can ordinary women um, get through this in such situations? And me myself coming from like Pakhtuns, I know how hard it can get, and sometimes it's very conservative, and you'll feel like totally alone because of how the women treatment
Yeah.
goes like. But I think for narcissistic abuse and emotional abuse, the first sign will be your body will tell you,
Mhm.
your inner gut. Your body will tell you something is wrong, something feels off, something is not right, no matter if you have seen it in the culture or in the women, that they'll just quietly go through. But then you have to listen to your body, your gut feelings. And second, you need to be aware, you have to go according to the era you're in. Okay, you have house responsibilities and everything, but some basic details that I have seen, that people will not know how to use debit cards, credit cards. They don't know how to dial emergency numbers. They don't know who their friend circle is. So first, you need to figure out a trust circle, good friends. Even if you don't have resources, maybe you can have good friends, and you need to speak. You need to let a word out that you are under in this situation. If you keep it hidden, maybe sometimes your own family is not going to help you, but there might be a friend. So always like speak up, I think, even if you don't have resources. Somebody or somewhere, Allah will send you a guide or a help. You just need to raise your hand and they're going to pull you off.
Yeah. Your body is going to tell you. I agree with you. There will be a time when you'll be like, that's it. I'm done. Let's go.
Hmm.
That's
And
happened.
also about women, like now there's Wi-Fi, there's internet, there's so many articles, there's details. Even if we don't have money at the moment, we do have like internet and articles, we can educate ourselves. We are
Yeah.
way ahead in time right now.
Yeah. And you have to, you know what? It was so hard for me. Believe me, when I left my first husband, he only gave me $200 and my accounts were in his name. So I left with
Mhm.
$200, but with $200, look at what I built. Look at bases. Look at what we have. So
Mashallah.
that's Allah. Allah does that, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, guys. It was wonderful seeing all of you. I'll send the recording. I'll send resources. I send the number of Leila. Okay. All right. See you guys next time.